Hello, and welcome to the Canadian Story, where we discuss what Canada is, what Canada could be, and what Canada should be.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Canadian Story. My name is David, and I'm here with Zach, and I want to welcome Éric. Éric, thank you for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
It's a great pleasure being with you guys.
I was talking to my friend Anthony and Senator Housakis, and we realized that we have not had enough guests from the wonderful province of Quebec, and you were gracious enough to grace us with your presence, and you just won the leadership of the Quebec Conservative Party. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your history within conservatism in Canada, and your love for your wonderful province?
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to start with my education. I studied political science at the University of Montreal. Then I did my master's in public administration at l'École nationale d'administration publique here in Quebec. And afterwards, I started working for the Bloc Québécois, Lucien Bouchard. I was a conservative. And if you recall, at the beginning of the 90s, there was a split up within the conservative movement in Quebec. And many of us followed Lucien Bouchard and several other MPs. And they founded the Bloc Québécois. We founded the Bloc Québécois. And I worked for the Bloc for a little while, from 93 until almost 2000 on Parliament Hill in Ottawa with MPs, research, communications, political advisor to the leader, director of the tours of the leader. And in 2000, I joined at the time they called it the United Alternative, with Tom Long and Preston Manning and some strong small C conservatives, either from the Reform Party or the Progressive Conservative Party. And that became afterwards the Canadian Alliance. I supported Stockwell Day as leader of the Canadian Alliance, became his communications guy, worked for Stock on the Hill. Not for that long, because unfortunately he didn't last very long.
Yes, unfortunately.
And then I moved from Ottawa to Quebec City, served under Mario Dumont, who was the leader of the Action démocratique du Québec, a small C conservative party at the National Assembly. And a few years later, went to Morocco for 2 years to work for an NGO, NDI, for those who know it, as director of political parties, trying to bring a technical assistance to people, to parliaments and political parties in developing democracies. After that, came back to Quebec, did the 2007 election for the ADQ. We won 41 MNAs that year, members of the National Assembly. Worked there for that was a minority government, didn't last that long neither. Then afterwards left for Iraq, still for NDI, came back from Iraq, and then started working in the media. I've been working for the last 10 years in several media. In English Canada, I was a columnist for 4 or 5 years for the Sun papers and Sun Media. Here in Quebec, I worked for all the mainstream media almost. I had contracts here and there, but mainly I've been a radio host for the last 6 years in Quebec City, the number one radio show. And it went very well. And I left the radio station in last July and started running for the leadership of the Conservative Party in November. The Conservative Party of Quebec was a very small party who got 1.5% in the last election. There was 700 members when I announced that I was running for the leadership, and we sold 14,000 new members.
Wow, that's awesome. Wow.
Yeah. So now the Conservative Party of Quebec has more members than the Coalition Avenir Québec of François Legault, of the Premier's party. And I had more votes as an elected leader last week than the leader of the Parti Québécois, who just got elected. So it gives you an idea of the enthusiasm of our troops. Over the last 48 hours, I started a fundraising, a money bomb, and we already fundraised. I think this morning we're at over $40,000 in 2 days.
So that's amazing.
We have some momentum with a donation on average of $17. So we're
the people are rising up. They want a voice.
So yeah, that's it. So it's going very, very well right now. and hopefully will be competitive in the 2022 election that's going to be held on October 3rd.
That's a great background. I have so many questions, but the first one, which we always ask on this show, is, what do you love about your country? What do you love about this place?
I should say what I used to love. I used to love our democratic rights and our individual freedoms.
Yes, those were great things.
Remember those?
They've been badly attacked over the last year. I thought, I went to, developing countries like Iraq and Morocco to help them to have some of the ideal that we have here in terms of democracy, in terms of individual freedoms. And I never, ever thought that I would fight harder now in Canada because our country went worse than the countries that were supposedly, far away from us.
I'm with. Yes.
I never ever thought that I would have to fight against a government that is telling that we should call the police to denounce our neighbor because he's receiving his mother for dinner. I never thought that I would have to defend kids who are playing in a park and that the policemen are running after him to give him a $1,500 ticket. It's just craziness what's going on right now. I never thought there would be a curfew that like I had in Iraq. For me, it's bad memories, very bad memories. This is not a war zone that we're talking about, but the government is using it and is depriving us from our basic rights the same way, countries that have no democracy are doing right now. And that's, for me, that's the reason why I decided to run in politics. When I saw what happened last spring, the first wave, I was disgusted. And I thought there's not enough people who are awakened. Like I thought a lot of people thought, we're so used to democracy, we take it for granted. We don't realize that it's fragile and it's scary and it's a slippery slope and it could go very quickly. Look, within a year, how much we lost our rights and our freedoms. And so I said, there's 4 parties at the National Assembly right now that are unanimous. There's always 125 members of the National Assembly out of 125 who vote in favor of all of that freak show.
Yeah.
And there's not one single person to stand up. So I was like, what am I going to do in the next election? So I decided, why don't I throw my name on the ballot? So that's what I'm doing right now.
I love it. And can you talk a little bit about the process of the leadership race? What you got to do, what it's like running in a leadership race, because you're the first person we've had on who's won.
It changed a lot since I left politics, federal politics and provincial politics, because for 2 reasons. First off, the new technologies have completely changed the game, and now with the crisis, it's even worse. I mean, I didn't meet one single member. I did everything virtual. Did a virtual tour. I met over 3,000 people on Zoom, like we're doing right now. I've sent tons of emails answered back on Messenger, on Twitter, on texts, everywhere. It's a completely different campaign. And the organization also is very, very different. With Call Hub now, we can call so many people. We have people calling people from everywhere at all sorts of time. So it was a very, very different campaign. But there is a way to still do grassroots politics, even virtually. And that's the challenge we had during the leadership. And that's the challenge we'll have again during the general election. The name of the game now is data. We need some data. We need to be able to reach those people out. We need their emails. We need their phone numbers. We need their names. We need their constituencies. And that's what we're trying to put a list in place. And, if I get 1 million Quebecers on my list of people supporting me, I'm going to win the election. I mean, it's that basic now. It's just a matter of numbers. And so that's what we're trying to achieve right now.
I love that. So how do you see the freedoms not only being eroded, but how do you think we could protect them? Like, what is a solution to what's happening to our freedoms?
Well, here in Quebec, we need to modify the bill on public health that is giving the emergency state a way too much freedom for one single politician. In our history, never ever in Quebec was there a man that had so much power in his hand for so long. We've never had a premier who didn't need his ministers, who didn't need the members of the National Assembly, who doesn't even need, it was even above the tribunals, who even gave over $4 billion of contracts without any submissions or any competition. I mean, this in other circumstances would be corruption with a capital C and would be, completely undemocratic. But because in the name of the emergency state, he can do whatever he wants. And that's what scares me. And we need a firewall to make sure to prevent such thing to happen again. So that's the first bill that I would modify if we have some members elected at the National Assembly next year. We don't want to go through this no matter what. If it's another virus or if it's this crisis that they're still pushing for another year, we need to modify that. I think that's the main problem. It's the emergency state that gives all the rights to our politician to violate all our freedoms right now.
No, I couldn't agree more.
I wanna develop on that question because the conversation that I have with most of the people around me now is what is it that, like, so you're in politics.
Yes.
I am not. What is it that private citizens can do to speed this forward? Because private citizens recognize as much as you in a political position do that our freedoms are being taken from us. And it feels so far away to be able to cast the next vote to try to make some sort of change. What are actionables that as private citizens we can do today to stand up against a government who is trying to take our freedoms?
There's several things we can do. I'm going to give you a very, very concrete examples. I've started a petition against the compulsory vaccine passport. You call it like that in English?
Yeah.
There's 55,000 people who signed it over the last few days.
Please send it to me so I can sign it.
Yeah, we also did I organized or participated in 4 rallies in front of the National Assembly or elsewhere. One with restaurant owners, one with parents who wanted their kids to do their sports, one against the masks, the compulsory mask at school. We've organized all sorts of events. That's important. The other thing is, and that's why we have so many members now. I tell people, politics has been interested by you over the last year. You should be a little bit more interested by politics. It's time for you to jump in and to become a member of a political party. It's time to get involved. I have people now who weren't even interested in politics who now want to run for me because they consider that politics has been way too present in their life over the last year, and they need to get rid of that big government. And so the people need to do something. And you see, as soon as the polls switch, we see the speech of the politicians switch, because this is not a health crisis. It's a political crisis. At the bottom line, it's a political decision. And we see it more in the States because we can compare states that have huge lockdowns with states who are still respecting the individual freedom of their citizens. And we see that the virus doesn't follow the rules, which means that no matter how much restrictions there are, it doesn't mean that the cases are exploding or people are dying more. And so we need to get involved. We need to show politicians that we're not supporting them. And when the polls switch, the policies switch. We saw it in Germany with Angela Merkel. She switched when she saw her party sinking. I wouldn't be surprised if yesterday we saw Doug Ford crying because he's looking at polls. Maybe he's crying. He's crying because he's seeing his numbers going down the drain as we speak. We don't know yet, but he knows before we do because he does his focus groups and he has more money. He's using taxpayers' money to fund research to know what the public opinion is thinking about. Last week, François Legault flip-flopped about the compulsory masks outside. And I wouldn't be surprised because he saw a few polls saying people are not supporting you. As soon as they feel the heat and they feel that we're fed up, we're sick and tired of their crazy decisions, they're going to switch. Because what they're looking for is not your health, it's your vote. And as soon as they feel the pressure that they're losing it, they're going to change their mind. And that's why I'm in politics. I'm not just there to win seats. I'm there to make sure that we're putting pressure on those people so they make finally the right decisions.
I love that. And I think that that's one of the most important roles anyone can play in society is putting a price on bad decisions, right? Saying, hey, you can make bad decisions, but I'm going to be here saying that was a bad decision, and I'm not going to shut up. And that's the beauty of democracy, right? So you've worked around the world for the sake of democracy. Share with, I'd love to hear what your perspective is as a Canadian when you're on the other side of the world fighting for a value that Canadians have fought for centuries now.
Yeah, Canada has a great reputation overseas. We have to admit, a lot of people, admire our democracy, our rights, our freedoms. A lot of immigrants came here because they saw a land of freedom, of opportunity. And currently, it's a land of restriction, of coercion, or I don't know how to say it in English. And they, this is not the Canada that they choose and that they immigrated to. And many of them are concerned now. I met a lot of immigrants in Montreal last week telling me in a protest we had in the streets of Montreal, telling me, Éric, I might have been wrong. I came here for good reasons, but I'm seriously concerned. I think it's even worse than the country I left right now. And those people are having doubts. And the immigrants are probably waking up faster than we do as Canadians who are born and raised here, because they saw the other side, the dark side, without democracy. And so I think our reputation now is not the reputation of the current Canada, it's the reputation of the Canada of the past. And we need to bring back that model ASAP. Because we're just talking about the democratic aspect right now, but we can also talk about the economic impact. When we see a prime minister who's good in theater, but obviously economy is not his strength, throwing us with huge deficit and increasing the debt like never before. He's going to more than double down the indebtedness within a few months. And there's not a lot of people who are concerned because he's distributing that money here and there. And some people don't feel the heat because they don't realize that all those debts are future taxes. It's not free. It's not free money coming out from nowhere and you're getting a check in your mailbox. It's money that is landed to you, that they're giving you right now, but you're going to have to reimburse very soon, and you're going to pay interest on top of that. So stop thinking that you're not hurt by the crisis right now. It's just a matter of time. They're just pushing it in time so he has time to get reelected. And that's what I'm concerned about. And the future generations also I'm concerned about, because there's a matter of equity between generations right now. Not only is the youth suffering badly in schools with masks, with all sorts of, with some of them even doing school at home because on a computer, and they're not moving all day. They can't do sports. They can't socialize with their friends. It's terrible. And we don't know the results of that. We'll figure out in a few years, because it's going to take time to figure out how damaged they will be out of this crisis. But on top of that, we're also pushing a huge debt on their shoulders, because at the end of the day, they're gonna be the ones reimbursing that huge mountain of debt that Justin Trudeau is piling on their back.
Yes, no, it's so. I love where you're going with this. You've decided to become the leader of the Conservative Party of Quebec, or how do you say it in French?
Le Parti Conservateur du Québec.
Parti de Conservateur de Quebec. What makes you a conservative? Why did you pick conservatism as your principle? Like, what?
Well, because I'm a fiscal conservative. Obviously, I'm not a social conservative. I have a lot of respect for people who are socially conservative. I do believe in freedom of religion, and we can all have different moral values, and I respect our freedom of choice. But personally, as you might know, I'm openly gay. I'm not part of the SOCON movement, but I am a fiscal conservative. I didn't talk about it, but when I was in school, I was even an intern with the Fraser Institute.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
And I've been involved with the Montreal Economic Institute here in Montreal as well. So I've always been very fiscally conservative. So for me, that's very important. And that's where my conservatism is. And for me, conservatism also means promoting democracy and individual rights and freedom of choice. That's what conservatism in my book is. And that's the kind of conservatism that I want to develop. And as you know, conservatism could mean different things, depending where we are in Canada. And in Quebec, conservatism also historically has met Quebec nationalism.
Yes.
The conservative wing, because it makes no sense to be a socialist and be a nationalist. Because when you're a socialist, you do believe in world order. Like the government doesn't make any sense because you're a multiculturalist by definition. So you don't care really about the borders and about the identity and about the language and about your culture. Because you want to be in a huge melting pot of all nations, anywhere, all the time, everywhere. So so for me, the true nationalism is also the heritage and being proud of your past, of your legacy, of what your ancestors and your grandparents and your parents did, and building on that. So and in Quebec, that means our French history, our presence in North America. When you want to become premier of Quebec, there's a difference between running for premier of any other province in Canada, because you want to be the leader of the most important government controlled by Francophones in America.
True.
And that's a huge duty, and it's a huge responsibility, and you have to take that into account, because one of your main concern has to be to protect and to promote French as well. Which other premiers don't have, or governors in states or whatever. So it's another responsibility also that I understand. And conservatism for me is important in that perspective.
So what is your favorite fact about Quebec? Like, what do you love about your home?
Well, what I used to love, again.
Yes, right.
Back to this.
I don't love the Quebec that we have right now.
Right.
I can tell you that. And I think there's a few million Quebecers who do not like the Quebec reality of today. But what I like of Quebec is that even if we're perceived as, more on the left of the political spectrum often, there's kind of a joie de vivre and a laissez-faire that doesn't exist elsewhere in Canada. Because in Quebec, there's the rules and there's what we do.
Yes.
And
I
that's
love that.
very, very different than in English Canada. In English Canada, you have less rules, but you respect them more.
Right.
So at the end of the day, I'm not sure who's freer.
Right.
So here there's an ideal, and that's called the law, and there's the reality, and that's what you do, whatever you want in your life. And that's something I really love about Quebec. It's the easygoing aspect of it, and the interpretation, the loose interpretation of the rules. That's something I really, really like about Quebec. And also the fact that because we're such a minority, because we're 2% in a continent of people who speak English all around us, Quebecers, I'm very proud of that. It's all like we're part of a big family by extension. And no matter where we are around the world, when we travel, first off, we recognize each other within 5 seconds. We don't have to ask somebody if he's Quebecer. We know right away. Just by hearing to talk, even if we don't see them, even if they're far away, we know there's Quebecers around.
Right.
We meet each other. When you're overseas, it's very, very strange. I don't know if English Canadians do that as much. I don't think as much as Quebecer. But for us, if you meet a Quebecer elsewhere, you're going to go spontaneously, talk to him, ask him where he's from, try to find if you have a family link or friends in common. And you're going to have dinner with them, even if you have no clue who they are.
Yes.
And there's kind of, I feel that we're part of an extended family. And that's something I like. It's a human-sized society or people, or call it as you like. And that's something I really, really like about Quebec.
A lot of people don't know that there's a big difference in Canada between the urban and the rural ways of life.
Yeah.
But I think what people really don't know is how big that difference is in Quebec. Can you share a little bit about the beauty of, because I've only begun in the last, I'd say, 5 years to discover the beauty of rural Quebec. And I gotta say, it's the most beautiful.
I wouldn't say rural and urban. I would say Montreal and the rest.
Right? Yeah. True.
What about Quebec City though? Quebec City is big as well.
Quebec City is very conservative.
That's
Quebec
true.
City,
it is. Yes.
Quebec City is not Montreal. Montreal is a multicultural city, bilingual, and that is an economic, engine for Quebec. But at the same time, it's one portion of Quebec. It's not Quebec. And unfortunately, especially in English Canada, you often see the image of Montreal because all the media are there, because those who speak English are more in Montreal. And so you don't have the image and the feeling and the sense and the knowledge of what's truly going on elsewhere, which is the majority of Quebec, outside of the island of Montreal. And you're absolutely right. It's two worlds. I mean, yes, there are Quebecers, there's Francophones in Montreal, but, it's a mix and it's a minority. So the rest of Quebec is completely, more traditional, obviously, more conservative, not just in the sense politically, but traditionally. So it's, it's our roots. So the regions are much more linked to what we used to be and closer to our realities. But it's unfortunately not the image that we see and the perception. And that's why there's always a huge difference between the perception of Quebec and what is truly Quebec. And that's why people are surprised when they come to Quebec, because the Quebec they know is more or less the island of Montreal, which is a tiny portion of the Quebec reality.
Can I speak to that really quickly?
Absolutely.
Have you spent any time in Rimouski?
In Rimouski, a little bit, but not that much. It's not a region. It's a region that I know a little bit because my former leader, Mario Dumont, the leader of the Action Démocratique, was in Rivière-du-Loup nearby when you're going on the south shore of the St. Lawrence River. But why do you ask me about Rimouski specifically?
So you're talking about the difference between Montreal and the rest of Quebec. So my background is I spent almost the last decade touring with a band. So I've been around, I've been in Quebec City a bunch, I've been in Montreal a bunch. But one time we ended up doing a show in this little place called Rimouski. And I will tell you, Rimouski, I've been all over Canada. Rimouski is my favorite place in Canada.
Oh, really?
The people there, it's hard to speak to. I don't really have I can't put my finger on it, but they are the best people I have ever met. They are the nicest, kindest, most beautiful people I have ever met. They accepted us into their community in a really, really beautiful way. And I just have this incredible memory of this place, Rimouski, and it's an entirely different experience, like you were saying, than Montreal, which I also love. But it's the same thing in Ontario. Actually, if you go downtown Toronto, it has nothing to do if you go in rural Ontario. It's two different worlds. So it's easy for you guys to understand that the similarities and the differences. It's quite the same. There's a huge gap, and surprisingly, I think that gap is getting greater and greater. And with the crisis right now, a lot of the Francophones who used to work in Montreal now, because they can work from home, many of them are leaving the island and going back in their regions. So the island is going to be on a decline in the very near future, and the regions are going to be booming again. So we're reversing the trend, because it's been always, since the Industrial Revolution, people have been converging towards downtown and huge cities. But right now, we're assisting to the exact opposite. The phenomenon is the other way around now.
Yeah, no, I agree. What do you think? What do you think is going to be the future of Quebec? What's your vision? You're a leader, so. You're a dealer in hope, as I like to say. Leaders are dealers in hope. What is the hope for Quebec? What is the future?
Well, the hope of Quebec is that we stop, first off, which is a great thing. We've been talking about Quebec for like half an hour now, and we didn't talk about the constitutional crisis. And that's something new in our history. If we had been talking together in the last few years, for the last half century, the first question would have been separation of Quebec. Now we're talking about Quebec, and we're not even mentioning it. And it proves, especially when it's with an Anglophone crowd, it proves that this debate is over and settled.
Yes, true.
It doesn't mean that we're not going to fight for our provincial rights and for our autonomy, but it means that there's not going to be a referendum in the near future and another crisis like we had. Quebec paid a lot because of those crises. We lost a lot of people, mainly Montrealers who left for Toronto, and we need to stop bleeding. And now there's a new debate. We're in a new paradigm. Thank God it's over. So I think that's the good aspect of it. And in terms of the future, I think we should turn this around, because we have a different language, a different culture. It was a source of fight, of frustration, of battles. And we need to stop seeing it as a weakness, and we need to see it as a strength. Many Quebecers like me are bilingual. We speak 2 international languages. We should see Montreal and Quebec and City and the whole province of Quebec as, a great opportunity to be even more open and making more business and being more prosperous, because we can reach out to more people than the rest of America. And we have to turn what used to be a weakness into a strength. That's how I see the future of Quebec. And I see the future of Quebec where Anglophones and Francophones are more and more bilingual, are more and more married to each other, are more and more in communication with each other and working together instead of working against each other like we've did for the last few decades.
Oh, I love that. I love that vision. So, and how do you see your love of freedom playing into that, right? Because like you said, there is this conception in the rest of Canada that Quebec is very left-wing, but you're a proud right-winger and a Quebecer. How do you see those two going together?
Well, first off, when we say Quebec is on the left, it's mainly because of the constitutional issue. Because there's been so much fights on, we didn't vote left or right for the last 5 decades. We voted yes or no. And it's hard to understand for English Canadians because you're not used to that. But here, your first loyalty was not about your ideas on economic freedom. It was, do you want your country to be Quebec or Canada? Do you want the capital city being Quebec City or Ottawa? That was the ballot question. Now this is over, as we said. So it's completely changing the paradigm. And I'm sorry, I lost your question. Which aspect?
No, it was just more of I forgot my question too, actually.
So it was.
You were talking about your concept of freedom,
yes.
and how you're going to marry that with your vision for Quebec.
Yeah. So if Quebec is more left, it's not obvious because on many aspects, Quebec has switched. If you remember, we had a premier, the last conservative leader in the National Assembly of the Quebec Conservative Party was Maurice Duplessis, who merged with a bunch of liberals and became Union Nationale and was the premier who lasted for the 40s and the 50s in Quebec. And he, at that time, Quebec was much freer. The state was much smaller than anywhere else in Canada. There was much more private investment in Quebec than anywhere else in Canada. So Quebec went from the most right-wing, if you look at the size of the state, the most right-wing state to the most left-wing state. And we keep moving back and forth. We're the ones who voted the most in favor of free trade when it was Brian Mulroney in 1988 for the Conservatives. Only Alberta and Quebec voted for more than 50% in favor of the Conservatives. It's because of Quebec and Alberta if we have free trade now. So we went there. Then Jack Layton arrived. Within a year, the NDP went from nowhere to, cleaning up Quebec. So maybe the difference in Quebec is that because we're not politically used to vote left and right, it's very tough to predict which way we're going to go.
Right, it's true. It's true. Yeah.
And, the CAQ that is currently in power in Quebec City, many of us thought that François Legault was more right-wing. Now we realize that he's a leftist. He's a former Parti Québécois minister, and it shows. He used us. He used us to believe that he was right-wing because he wanted to merge with the ADQ. And some of us were naive enough to believe him. But now we realize that guy was lying and he betrayed us. And that's why we're going to see how big and how fast is going to grow the Conservative Party. And that's going to, I think we're going to measure it truly now with the Conservative Party, because now we're going to have a true right-wing option on the ballot. I'm not going to hide. I'm not going to say that when François Legault was asked, are you left-wing or right-wing? He would say, I'm not left, I'm not right, I'm forward. Like those kind of things, making us believe, well, maybe he's right-wing, but he doesn't want to say it. But now we realize, no, he was left-wing and didn't want to say it.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
But now it's not going to be a problem. It's going to be obvious in your face. And those who believe us, who believe that we should turn right, they're going to be more than welcome within the Conservative Party. And we're going to count the ballots on October 3rd and see how many of us there are.
Yeah, no, I love that. One of the things that it doesn't get talked about enough is the beauty of Quebec. I argue that sometimes the natural beauty of Quebec is maybe better than any other province apart from Alberta, but I'm biased.
I agree with you, by the way.
Could you talk a little bit about about the Lake Country and what it's like to drive through that corridor from Quebec City to Montreal and just the beauty?
Well, the first thing that Quebec has, I think that we have two big things that are spectacular. It's the St. Lawrence River Valley. I think that's very unique in the world. Actually, there's not that many rivers that are that large and that beautiful. And the second thing is the seasons, because of the colors, because of the perfect seasons in many regions. We're very fortunate for that. And the fact also that we're an old society, meaning that, our settlements were the first ones in America. We have more history, so there's more in terms of architecture, in terms of churches, and so there's all sorts of heritage that we are fortunate to have. So that's also, I think, a huge plus. And because we were developed at an age where agriculture was the main economic factor, we're more spread on our territory. So there's small villages, much more in Quebec everywhere than anywhere else in Canada. So I think that's the beauty of it. And the downside is that we're a little bit poorer than the rest of the country. So if we were a bit wealthier, and that's my purpose, and that's why I think we need some economic reforms in Quebec, we need to be as rich, as wealthy, if not more, than the rest of the country or the rest of the continent. And that would also make Quebec even more beautiful if we were richer, obviously.
I love that because I've spent 10 years living in Ottawa, so right on the border, obviously, and would spend a lot of time in Gatineau working, but also Wakefield and that kind of area. And I'm always just blown away by how beautiful it gets when you cross that border and just start heading into the, basically, I guess, the Shield. But
it's amazing.
Yeah,
and you spoke to the length of history that Quebec has as well. That's something I notice when I go to cities like Montreal and cities like Quebec City, especially. Having spent a lot of time in Europe, it has that just older than the rest of Canada feel,
yeah,
which
I feel like
just adore.
Quebec is the Europe of Canada.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, Quebec City. Yeah, I live in old Quebec City, so I can talk about it.
Oh yeah.
There's only 5,000 or 6,000 of us within the fortifications. But you're right. It's very unique. That when I was talking about the strength that we have in Quebec, that's also something huge. The roots that we have here are deep, and we, there's a lot of people coming. Tourism in Quebec now is booming, but not this year. But unfortunately, there's nothing going on. But over the last few years, it's been growing like crazy. We now have boats, cruise ships coming in town. It's becoming a huge hub. So there's a huge potential there as well. And, it's funny because many Canadians, we travel all around the world and we don't know our country.
No,
and
it's
I'm
true.
always surprised and shocked to meet people from Toronto or anywhere else in Canada, doesn't matter, that, they've been traveling the world. They know Asia, Europe, everywhere, Latin America, but they've never been to Quebec City. It's always surprising for me.
Yeah, I think we were... before we hit record, speaking about how I'm one of those ignorant Ontarians. I think that is one of Ontario's biggest downfalls, is that they look outside of their own country to experience other ideas and cultures when there's a neighbor right next to them that offers that, and it gets overlooked. And if you're from Ontario and you're listening to this, go to Quebec City when you won't get arrested to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you can't even cross the borders now because it forbids you to.
Yeah, which is brutal. Absolutely brutal.
Which none of us are very happy about.
If you think about it, like 2-3 years ago, would you ever thought one day that our government would deprive us from crossing
No,
the Ottawa River.
never,
that
never.
People like me wouldn't be allowed to go to their cottages.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just insane what's going on.
It is insane.
And you know, no matter if I'm in my cottage or in my house, I'm not more dangerous to anyone. Actually,
No.
I'm probably less dangerous to my cottage because I don't have a neighbor like a mile around.
Yes.
And it's just, you know, the government's intervention over the last 13 months has been just over the top. And Quebec has not been different. Like the whole country went wrong, but Quebec has been the worst.
Right.
There's nowhere else in America where the restaurants have been closed, shut down for such a long period. There's nowhere else in Canada where the government has openly asked people to call the police, to denounce their neighbor, and ask the police to get in the house without a mandate. There's no other place in America where they stopped the construction industry. They shut down all the industries. I mean, we didn't go in the opposite direction than the rest of the country. We just went worst.
Right.
And that's what that's why I'm mad at François Legault, our current premier right now.
And I think it's time. There's, again, talking with people around me about this, it feels like what's happening in Canada right now is just this like thing that happens in other countries. You talk about the work you did overseas, and it's like that happens over there. But people need now to wake up and realize that that is happening right outside their front door in their own country where they thought they were free. And it sounds really dramatic to say that, but we have to start saying those things.
Yeah, we have to start saying enough is enough.
Enough is enough. We are watching our rights being eroded away by a government who seems to not care about the well-being of their people anymore.
And now we're going to talk about
okay.
Federal Conservatives, because you know that there's going to be probably a federal election before there's a provincial election here in Quebec. And you know, the Federal Conservatives initially, you know, they had a leadership race not that far away, and they had 4 candidates selling memberships. But now the Quebec Conservative Party has more members than the Federal Conservative Party in Quebec. And I think it's important for our federal allies to understand that they need to reach out to people, and they need to understand what's going on the ground, and stop being scared of the polls of Trudeau or people in favor of lockdown. They need to talk to the real people. They need to get down on talk to their grassroots, because I'm quite sure that a lot of people will tell them the same message we're talking about today.
I can. You're totally right.
I can 100% confirm that, at least in my circle of friends, because you know this is so in Ontario we are experiencing now our 3rd lockdown. The first one we didn't know. There was no data. Everyone was scared. There was a lot of support for it. The second one, I didn't find a lot of people questioning it. But now that we are rolled around to the 3rd one, I 100% believe that the scales have shifted and the majority has flopped. And people are now saying this can no longer go on because this is crazy.
Yeah.
And I really believe that is where public opinion actually lies. I don't believe that people are buying in to the narrative that they were a year ago. I just don't think that they are, because they're getting sick of living in a free country that is no longer free.
Absolutely, you're right. I know it's the same thing here, if not worse, because the lockdown is even worse, so it's more brutal. So the support, I think, is going to go down. But the polls are still suggesting that you know, it's popular, but I don't feel it on the ground at all. It's very surprising.
I think sometimes it takes a while for the polls to catch up.
Yeah, it takes you know, it's like when you're watering your plants. It takes a while before the water goes down to the roots. So we know that there's water on top, but it seems that the roots don't have water yet. But it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I've really enjoyed having you on. Would like to have you on again in the future.
Absolutely. It's going to be a pleasure.
Would you like to say any last words about your love for Anthony Kosh, everyone's favorite new Jewish convert, before we go?
Thank you very much for both of you. It was a great conversation. I really enjoy being with you. And we'll I'm sure talk to each other a little bit more in the near future.
Yeah, let me know if you need any help with anything.
Because for me, it's important to reach out to English Canadians, not because I want votes. I'm not looking for votes, obviously, outside of Quebec.
Right.
But it is important, especially for people like the Conservatives in Quebec who want to decentralize, who want to respect the provincial rights, who do not agree with Ottawa's knows best of Trudeau and of the centralization in Ottawa. It is very important to have allies in other parts of the country, because this is not about separatism. This is about every single province and every single Conservative all across Canada should be supporting such an agenda. So we need to link to each other, even those who are provincially involved, because our message is very similar. And we need those allies to fight the big government in Ottawa.
Absolutely. That is literally what we're trying to do here, with not only with this podcast, but in life. So.
Yeah. And you can consider me an Ontario supporter of you.
Exactly.
And I just wanted to personally thank you for all of the obvious hard work that you were putting in.
Thank you very much.
To
I
fighting
just want to
for
tell
our
you one
rights and
thing about
freedoms.
that. We do have supporters from outside of Quebec, because as you know, many Quebecers are moving, especially usually it used to be out west to work.
Yes.
So our party allows people from other provinces of Canada to be member. You cannot fund our party because that's illegal according to our laws, but you could be a proud card member, carrying member of the
let's become members.
Sign me up.
We'll become members for sure.
Well, thank you very much, guys.
All right, thank you. Have a good one.
Merci, au revoir.
Thank you for listening to The Canadian Story. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at The CAD Story. That's The CAD Story. If you enjoy this podcast, please share it with your friends and family. Let's work together to remind Canadians how great their country is.